Apologies for the technical difficulties as happen from time to time with any of these sorts of things. We were just touching on the emotional aspects, I guess, of this process. And I remember when I was running the startup way back when, that was kind of one of the toughest things that I had to deal with was, on the one hand, you're positioning yourself in the psyche of the mind of the 17-year-old who has these aspirations and doesn't really have the concept of the checkbook. And then you've got the parents, and especially as we're mollycoddling this generation, we get a bunch of people who have never been told no before, who get a trophy for showing up, and they expect that they're going to Harvard, they're going to Yale, and do not tell me otherwise. And the parents will kowtow to that, and it's part of what gets us into this mess that we're in my opinion, at least. So from a financial standpoint and from a psychological standpoint, what's the best approach beyond getting into the wallet and finding out how much money you exactly have to spend? How do you assuage these caviar dreams with the can of sardine reality that some families may have?
Well, I think you have to come up with some statistical data that backs your suggestions as to what they ought to do. Now, oftentimes, people don't want to be confused with the facts, and there's nowhere to go from there. Let me give you an example. I had a student not 3 days ago say to me, well, I want to go to a really good school. And her parents were prepping me before this meeting, saying that she's a very intelligent, bright, very high achiever type student, and she's Ivy League material, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. And so she's trying to tell me, this is a 17-year-old, trying to tell me that this is what people are looking for. They want students from great colleges, and that's where I want to go. I said to her, I said, well, okay, where did you get this information that tells you that this is what people are looking for? They want students who graduate from great colleges. Oh, well, I don't have any data in front of me. I said, well, how about if I told you that the Gallup organization did a survey about 2 years ago, and they asked this very simple question of parents and businesses all over the country. How important do you think it is where you went to school? How important do you think that really is? And 30% of the parents said, oh, it's very important. And then I said to her, and what percentage do you think business owners had with that same question? She said, probably about the same. I said, no, it was 9%. I said, so in other words, 91% of American business out there really don't give a lot of credibility to the person who just graduated from Princeton. They might be impressed that he graduated from Princeton, but the only time where you went to college really matters is if you're applying for a job at a stock brokerage firm on Wall Street, or you want to work for a high-profile legal firm on Wall Street. Okay, those people, they want to know that you graduated from an Ivy League school. But the rest of America ain't lawyers, and they ain't stockbrokers. All right, so tell me now, my having given you that information, which is based on fact, do you still think you ought to be applying to these, what you call the best schools? And she said, yes. and so I just raised my hands, and the parents just sat there. And I looked at the parents and I said, well, let me ask you a question. Are you all on the same page relative to where you think your daughter ought to go to school? Yeah, where do you think your daughter ought to go to school? Well, at a great college like the Ivy Leagues. I said, well, what if I told you that the chances of you qualifying are excellent, but the chances of you not getting in are equally excellent, because at the schools, the decisions are very arbitrary. I mean, one of my clients interviews clients for an Ivy League school, And she's been doing it for 26 years. And she said, Paul, if I were you, I would tell your students not to apply to the Ivy League schools because we're not accepting them based upon, what they did with their lives. Well, we are. We just that we have so many to choose from that I make decisions based upon little things like whether or not we need another piccolo player in the orchestra, or gee, we haven't had a kid from that zip code in a few years. Yeah, that's how I make those decisions. And it's very arbitrary at my level, especially when valedictorians are a dime a dozen.
Yeah, there are plenty of high schools out there. And yeah, that's a very good point. That valedictorians are a dime a dozen. You mentioned the Ivies, and you had the statistics that probably will tell me what your answer is to this following question. But if 91% of business owners don't care where you went to school, are the Ivies still important?
No. And of course, anybody who graduated from an Ivy League school has already hung up on this conversation just now. All right?
Right, exactly.
The Wall Street Journal did an article a couple of years ago, and I wrote a blog as a result of that article. And I guess it was a study that was done over a 30-year period. I'll get to the bottom line on this right now. The recruiters throughout American business have selected what they believe are the 25 schools where they recruit the most future employees. There is only one Ivy League school on the list. It's ranked 14th. It's Cornell. And the only reason people go to Cornell is to get engineers. Not anybody who's majored in English, philosophy, engineer, or not engineering, but or any other major. It's just engineers. And the top school, which is a state school, is Penn State. It's the #1 school that recruiters all over America go to. So you can imagine how difficult it is to get into Penn State, which is a state school. Mm-hmm. And so the ivy, the bloom off that ivy rose is gone now. And I have a client who happens to be the president of a division of a major corporation here up on Route 128 here in Boston. And he said that as a knee-jerk reaction every year, they used to just hire kids right out of Harvard because it was just down the street. Well, he was kind of tired with the entitlement attitude with these students showing up late for work, leaving work early in the afternoon. So he goes to the CEO of the company who makes $22 million a year, and he says, I'm having this little problem with these people that I'm hiring from Harvard. They just don't seem to have the work ethic that everybody else seems to have. So the CEO of the company said, do you know where I went to college? I mean, you get the annual report every year. You read it, right? He goes, yeah. He says, my bio's in there. And do you recall where I went to school? He says, yeah, some school out in California. I never heard of it. and so it's okay. It's anecdotal, but it's really a microcosm of the larger issue that it's not where you go to school. It's what you do with what you're given once you get to whatever institution you're going to, and that's really the bottom line. And there are lots of colleges out there that are very affordable. All you have to do is do the research and get it done. It's very easy to do. That's what people hire me to do. And I got to tell you, I don't have unhappy clients because these people are pretty hard-bitten and they demand not to spend a lot of money that they can't afford.
So if you were to, in the couple more minutes that we've got, if you were to give kind of a theme, underline, bottom line, this is what I suggest for somebody who is probably, let's say, new to the process. You were telling me off camera that you consider yourself the college advisor for the 99%. So let's assume that that's the target audience that we're going after. If you were to give them some parting words and say, this is what I would encourage you to do as you're planning, thinking about sending a kid off to college, what would you tell them?
Wow, what a great question. I would take a real hard look at the state colleges first in terms of affordability. Look at community colleges as a place to start so that your student could continue to live at home for 2 years and have a Stafford loan, which the student signs for, to pay for those 2 years. So when they go off to a state school for the remaining 2 years, 4 years, for a 4-year school, you can pay for 2 years of a college, of a 4-year college, and the student pays for the first 2. That's one way to do it. That's one way to really grapple this issue of affordability. And by the way, just to be on the safe side, you got to remember that 81% of students are taking 5 and 6 years to get a bachelor's degree. 5 and 6, it's not 4 years anymore. It's 5 years is the new 4. And you better get religion on this issue of financing and get really realistic about what it is you're going to be able to afford. Otherwise, you're just, it's painful. I don't have a summary. That's the best I can do. I'm sorry.
Well, I guess I smell or I hear the exasperation in your voice.
Yeah, I mean, it's very frustrating to deal with parents who don't want to be realistic about the college issue, and the fathers get into this daddy's little girl syndrome, which means I'm going to give my daughter whatever she wants. She deserves it. She works hard and all that. Okay, great. She deserves it. She works hard and all that. But so you're going to saddle her with debt. You're going to tell her that you can't afford it, but, oh, that's a great school to go to, and you really should give it your all. And who knows, maybe you might marry a guy that doesn't have as much debt as you have, but, you'll see it through. Oh, come on. I mean, that's disgusting. I'm just disgusted by that.
It happens probably all too often, I would imagine.
What's that?
It happens all too often.
Way too often. I got to tell you, I got an email from a lady the other day. And if you don't mind, you mind if I just read this to you for a second?
Yeah, please.
She said that she agreed with me on my whole assessment about this whole college thing. She said, because $100,000 is a lot of money, my parents are willing to co-sign for me, so they also took a leap of faith as well. If I can't make a payment on my private loans, they get harassing phone calls. I've only been able to afford interest-only payments with my private loans, and there are times when I have to ask for a deferment because I couldn't afford the payments. I've heard of forgiveness programs and, too good to be true types that eliminate your student loan things, but I'm afraid of being scammed, so I feel like I made a choice, whether it was informed choice or not. I made a choice to take out loans to go to college, and now I have to live with that choice. I mean, and then she talks and she sends me another email where she said she had to, she wishes she had never gone to college because of the debt that I'm in. I graduated cum laude as a double major, and I worked full time. Tuition was ridiculously out of control. It's just so sad. It just goes on and on and on and on. And that was just one email that I got. I can't imagine how many emails that people like that send to their friends every single day.
Yeah, it's a scary process, and I guess the advice I'm hearing from you is to get real and take a real hard look at what you're going to spend, what you have to spend, and realize that the value of the Ivies is not what it used to be, and the value of the state schools and the community colleges is probably a lot more than you think it is.
Exactly. And I would tell the kids, give your kids more credit for learning as opposed to giving the credit to the colleges for teaching. I always like to say to a student, I could put you on an island for 3 years and give you a pile of books and tell you, look, I'll be back in 3 years and I'll give you one test and I'll bet you'll do absolutely fine. And we'll call you the school that you're going to, Island University, and you're going to be just fine. And nobody's going to care where you went to school. It isn't going to matter. And so if we took that kind of a realistic approach, we wouldn't have all this kind of debt, and we wouldn't be having this kind of conversation.
Wonderful, wonderful. Paul, it's been great chatting with you. Thanks for being a guest on the Metafinance show, and we'll certainly we'll dial you back in before too long, because I know that these issues, as our community grows, these issues are going to keep coming up. Oh my gosh, how am I going to pay for this? Should I pay for this? Where are we going? Why are we going? Where we're going? And let's stop this debt spiral that the colleges are helping to cause. So I appreciate your time today, Paul.
Thank you, David. I appreciate your taking the time.
Thanks. All righty, folks. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the Metafinance Show.